We passed a lady named Jody. She had a podcast thing in one hand and some dehydrated potatoes in a bucket in the other. And I knew that the days were numbered. Hello everybody and welcome back to the sofa. Sofa's back there. I'm right here. My name's Paul if you're new to the channel. If you're not new to the channel, guess what? My name's still Paul. Y'all, we are continuing on in our endeavor to finish Visions of Glory. Okay, so this is like part, 10, something like that. I'll have to look after I record. It's a struggle. My body rejected the book months ago, and it has taken me probably close to a year to read this book. Okay, so there is that. The only thing that is pushing me through this book at this point is that we're going to read another one of Chad Daybell's books after this one. So I'm desperately trying to get through it, but we just do it in increments, right? So we're going to pick up where we left off last time. Again, we're looking at this book and reading it through the lens of what's the chokehold that it has on people like Ruby Franke, Jody Hildebrandt, Lori Daybell, Chad Daybell, this whole crowd, okay? Now where we left off at is we're going to be beginning with this little section right here. It says, light, darkness, and the earth. So let's just get on into it. Now what I'm going to be doing also is I have the book right here because I'm doing the green screen and I'm not sure how this fancy technology works. So I don't want to be like doing all like this and it messing it up. And it might have just messed it up then. I don't know, but let's just get into it. I saw that the earth itself had been created perfect and is fulfilling the measure of its creation. Everything about it, its placement in the universe, the distance in from the sun, and the bringing forth of life, fruit, and beauty. It's all created by and maintained by the continuing presence of the light of Christ. People institute governments, false religion, false science, and false teachings. They build cities where evil easily thrives and provide universities and schools to promote such things. The entire collection of the philosophies of men, their lies, their religions, their rationalizations, and sins. As these constructs and pollutions of man spread across the globe, they cover the world with darkness, and the earth responds with upheaval, devastations, floods, famines, pestilence, and death. All of this is like a blanket of darkness that spreads itself across the face of the earth, dimming the light of Christ that reaches the earth. This diminishes the power that keeps the earth orderly and a fit habitation for mankind. There is a process given to the earth whereby it cleans itself. When evil overtakes it, natural disasters, plagues, and upheavals begin in random places. Remember how when all this is going on, and even Kevin talked about it in the docuseries about how there's earthquakes in 2020 and all this kind of stuff? There you go, right? When evil on the world becomes so great that the light of Christ is dimmed, it will produce eruptions, extremes of weather and temperature, storms, floods, earthquakes, and other destructive events. There is a direct correlation between the choices of mortals and the conditions of the earth. This is why there will be so many natural disasters and death caused by these acts of nature in the latter days, because mankind by then will have veiled the earth in darkness. This isn't to say that the earthquake or flood is aimed like a missile at the evil, or that places where disasters happen need cleansing the most. The whole of humanity suffers when darkness reigns. Enoch saw the earth weep because it wanted to rid itself of evil and rest in the millennial day. If it was tired and sick in Enoch's day, imagine how weary it is today. Immediately following this view of the earth and the effects of spiritual light and darkness, the scene changed once again. I began seeing the earth going through the prophesized latter-day destructions. The first thing I saw were the signs of the second coming being made manifest in the earth. These signs were in the form of events in the heavens and on the earth. The most visible of these were the unending natural disasters. Other signs were wrongly interpreted by mankind to be unexpected but normal upheavals in the earth and the celestial events among the stars and planets. I could see growing evil in the hearts of mankind. I saw that the earth was in great trouble. It was suffering, dying, losing its ability to sustain life on its face. It was like a tropical flower that had been moved into a basement devoid of all light and was dying in the darkness. It could not have lived without the light that gave life to everything and made it beautiful and useful to man. Every part of the earth was in great tribulation. Flying across America. That's the next section, flying across America, okay. I began moving across the world, flying as if I were in a fast helicopter, close to the earth. I could see every detail below me. I was not in any machine, of course, but I saw it from that perspective. My spiritual companion was with me and guided our flight. We moved in and out of the cities across North America. I saw that whenever this time was that I was being shown, the financial structure of the world had completely collapsed. Every bank had closed down and money was worthless. People were learning to trade and barter. Manufacturing and industry were at a virtual standstill. There were no raw materials and no money to pay the workers. Factories and global businesses shut down overnight. All of the utilities were in chaos. People tried to keep the necessities of life running, but they were sporadic and mostly offline. There were blackouts everywhere, some of them lasting many months. Almost all water was not fit to drink because of acts of war against this country. People suffered everywhere. My flight across North America began in Salt Lake City. There had been a massive earthquake in that area in the fall of the year. I tried to determine which year it was that even while I was in the vision, but I could not. I looked into shop windows for a calendar or a date. I even looked at people's watches to see if they showed the year. I was not allowed to learn when these things might happen. All I can say is that Salt Lake City looked in that vision much as it does today. There were models of automobiles that I did not recognize and other small changes, but I considered it as having happened not far into the future. That the fault that runs along the Wasatch Front had moved dramatically, causing a great deal of damage to cities along the front. In the third part of this experience, which I will relate in the next chapter, I went back to Salt Lake City and found myself in my own life, in my own body, living through these very events. So I will come back to those events when I relate the third part of this visionary event. Okay, the next part is called the next spring. I saw that the next spring after the destruction in Utah, there was another devastating series of earthquakes that occurred along the west coast of North and South America. The western coast of California and Mexico and all the way to the tip of South America was shaken so badly that much of it broke away from the mainland and formed a series of islands off the coast. Seawater rushed in to fill in the canyons between land and island. Major cities were shaken to the ground, with inland areas suffering less damage. The same quake ended up the coast of Canada and continued all the way to Alaska. I didn't see the effects of the earthquakes north of the continental United States, but I assumed the destruction was undiminished. This earthquake sent tidal waves across the world. I was not shown what occurred in South America, Europe, Asia, or Africa, but I assumed this was a worldwide catastrophe from events that I will relate in the next chapter. I assumed that Europe was not as badly affected by earthquakes as North America because those countries sent large amounts of relief and supplies to America after the earthquakes. Okay, so pause for 1 second because I'll forget to make these thoughts at the end of the video. Okay, so I just had this thought reading this, and again, if you are and you want to share, if you're of a religion that kind of follows like end of times and things of this nature, whatever, you can correct me if I'm wrong here, but I'm looking at it through the lens of like Jody and Lori and all them or whatever. So this whole obsession that they specifically have with like, just the end of times, especially Lori and Chad, end of times, and this is happening, and if you're in that realm, there must be some level, especially if you're in the frame of mind of like, well, Lori and Chad are talking about we're leading the group, right? The 144. So especially exciting for them. But even if you're not thinking you're the leaders or like, God or whatever they thought, and you're just like, okay, well, I'm going to be one of the people because I've lived righteously or whatever, right? Like I'm going to survive this and go to the next thing, whatever it is, okay? There must be some level of excitement to this, right? Because how would that not be exciting, okay? Like, oh my gosh, the second coming, this is what we've been preparing for, this is what, whatever. And so this anticipatory thing of this, like, here we go, the next realm, it's gonna happen. Because take out, like, any kind of religious, like, belief or whatever, look at all the crazy stuff that happens with weather, with life, with the world and all that. Like, most people can always say, things aren't like they used to be. Things just keep getting worse. And so if you sift it through this, it kind of makes sense, right? If this is what your belief system is. Then also you sift it through another sifter. I love using kitchen analogies of Lori and Chad, who it's like, hey, we're it, right? We're leading everybody. We're the cat's meow. We're the cat's pajamas, whatever that saying is. Well then, okay, bring the end of times on because this is their time to shine. I mean, here's their 15 minutes. So no wonder they wanted to align themselves with this. And the whole thing of like, well, last Tuesday when I passed away, it was like the 5th time I died that day and went, to the heavens and saw everything. Oh, but the 4th time was rough, girl. I had a headache for hours. You know what I mean? Like, this obsession that they have with getting otherworldly information. I don't think so. Let's keep going. Okay, so the next thing says 2 months later. About 2 months later, another earthquake opened up a narrow canyon approximately where the Mississippi River is now. Though it devastated eastward where the Mississippi presently merges with the Ohio River, it followed the Ohio into the Great Lakes. The Ohio River and the remainder of the Mississippi River rerouted itself into this canyon. It created a huge new lake and river system approximately where the Mississippi River is now. This canyon essentially created an eastern and western United States, which figured into some international intrigue later on. So just right here, can you imagine Lori with this right here? Calling up the kids, you better go on to the Mississippi River, because let me tell you what, last Monday when I died and went on that vision glory, oh yeah, it's gone, girl. Oh yeah. So we're planning a vacation. We got to do it now. I've got privileged info. Thank you. Goodbye. So, you see what I'm saying? Like this kind of stuff right here. And here's the thing too with all this kind of stuff too. You can never prove that it's going to happen. Like if I was going to do this, 100% this would be me. I never get why these people do this like right here. In 3 years, this is going to happen. Why? You just have to make an excuse up when it doesn't happen. I guess maybe they're hoping this stuff will. I don't know. I would be like this. I'd be like this right here. So it's 2025. I'd be like, this is going to happen in 3025. I come up with some good stuff too, right? Because who's going to... place, right? Nobody's gonna be able to say. I push it way out, okay? Wouldn't even really bother, like if you were just about grifting, you know what I mean? Why bother writing it down so that people can say you're wrong? Just do your grift talking about all this crazy stuff's gonna happen in 3025. If you call 1-800, I'll send you some holy water and you will be immune to it. Oh, okay, just dial up one easy payment. I next flew over the lower part of California and toured the Gulf of Mexico. Okay, y'all, no joke. I was getting ready to stop and say, I can tell you without going further, they're going to say that California was just a wasteland. Y'all, the next sentence, almost all of California was in ruin. How did I know, right? Okay. With less destruction away from the coast, I saw that a great landmass had risen up into the Gulf. It extended from Mexico to Florida and consisted of a few large islands that replaced the water of the Gulf. I did not think to look toward Cuba. In some places, the new land met Mexico, Texas, and Florida. But there was also a large waterway separating most of the land from America. I did not see where the land came from. It either rose up from the Gulf floor or was pushed north up by the earthquakes from South America. The land was not barren all over, but large parts of it had trees and other vegetation. Some parts of it were just muddy islands. I'm at a loss to explain where it came from. This great landmass created a tidal wave that did a great deal of devastation as far north as Chicago. About 2/3 of the Gulf was now a series of large islands. I did not see the damage this caused worldwide, but I can only assume it was extensive. I then flew across the upper part of Florida and up the east coast of the United States. The earthquakes had not reached here as strongly, so the infrastructure was more intact, but there had been a biological attack and there was some more death in the eastern and northeastern parts of the country than in those areas stricken by the earthquakes. I saw bodies stacked up in town squares and cities abandoned because of the stench of death. There were marauding bands of people plundering and stealing in every major city. They were murdering everyone they found to preserve remaining resources for themselves. It was like survivors in a lifeboat, throwing the weakest among them overboard to leave enough food and water for the strongest. It was a gruesome scene. The scene was violent and disgusting. During the writing of this book, I was shown the text of President John Taylor's vision of similar events, where starvation and death were everywhere. I was startled by the similarities, though the suffering was seen more graphically in the President Taylor visions. And then it directs us to Appendix A for the complete text of the dream. We'll just get to it when we get there. I'm waiting for something in here talking about we stopped off and wherever Jody's at, and luckily we're able to feast on 3-year supply of green beans and dry mashed potatoes. You know what I'm saying? I'm waiting for that part to come up. We passed a lady named Jody. She had a podcast thing in one hand and some dehydrated potatoes in a bucket in the other. And I knew that the days were numbered. The next thing says foreign troops. I saw foreign troops landing on the east and west coast of America. There were tens of thousands of them. They came in large ships, some of them former cruise ships with naval escorts. They landed with thousands of vehicles, most of them laden with relief supplies, but also with large tanks and missile launchers. They wore blue-green helmets, and I assumed they were international relief troops. My mortal body is colorblind, and I'm not sure if I saw the color of these troops' helmets correctly in the vision. I didn't see many troops in the large cities like Boston, Chicago, and New York because because there was almost nobody there to relieve. Those who had not died were trudging west to escape from cities. In California, some Americans tried to fight the troops because they saw them as invaders. There were a few battles where the local people lost the battles and were subdued. The foreign troops did not punish the survivors, they just asked them to cooperate, fed them, and released them. This won over the mind of the people. I also saw that the foreign troops had come with expectation that they would have to kill locals, even though Americans were in no condition to resist them. Okay, now, the next thing is Chapter 7, Tribulation and Fullness. So, we're getting into it, okay? Okay, so the first part in this, I've got my glasses on now, is earthquakes and floods. Again, just constant destruction, constant not good stuff, right? My next realization was that I was in my body, standing in the parking garage beneath the present church office building. What I mean by in my body is that I was no longer flying across the continent, but I was now a participant in the vision. It once again felt real to me. I had possession of all my senses and was experiencing these things in perfect detail. As in everyday life, I was subject to the events around me. Even though what I saw next had yet to occur, I was nevertheless there, dressed in a business suit, carrying a briefcase, and walking through this familiar underground parking garage. I had parked there many times when I had attended my monthly meetings appertaining to my call. In my new circumstance, I remember that I was just walking from a meeting with a member of the Quorum of the 12. I was feeling content. With the spirit warmly present upon me, I had just reached my car, which was a different vehicle than the one I presently drive in 2011. I had just about reached the car door when the ground started shaking violently. I thought this is a bad earthquake. I don't have time to get out of this parking garage with my car. The building will fall on top of me before I get out. I was only 20 or so feet from the exit, so I dropped my briefcase and ran for the exit. The ground was rolling violently beneath me. I fell down many times, but when I stood, I was not injured. I reached the road, which was North Temple, only to see water gushing up out of the ground. I have to pause in my narrative a moment to say that I have been sick all my life, and running that short distance would normally have exhausted me. However, it says, but in this vision, I was not tired, not injured by repeated falling, and not particularly afraid. I realized I was different. My body had been upgraded in some indefinable way. Even though all this felt real, I knew I was experiencing a vision, and I wondered if my upgraded body was an effect of that vision. I didn't understand what I was being shown until much later. Now, back to North Temple. The earthquake had broken up the streets, and where there were cracks in the road, water was shooting into the sky. Water was also gushing from manhole covers, storm drains, and cracks in the earth. It was shooting up with sufficient enough force that the water was spraying everywhere, completely soaking me. It was fresh water, surprisingly clean and clear. Everywhere I could see there were geysers of water spraying with a deafening roar into the air. I asked myself, where is all of this water coming from? I can only guess at the answer to this question. I turned east and ran uphill. Water was roaring down North Temple in a flood, which grew deeper each moment. Water was now up around my calves, and I ran uphill against the current with surprising energy. The eastern side of Salt Lake City is several hundred feet higher than where the temple sits, and I was running for high ground. The ground continued to heave, and I fell down many times, but each time was uninjured. I saw cars with people in them being swept down the street, along with furniture, parts of homes, dead bodies, and trash of every type. It was a sickening scene. There was nothing I could do to help them. I fell one more time and was myself swept away into the swirling flood. I held onto debris and kept my head above water. All this time, I was wondering where all the water was coming from. The water was shooting up about 6 feet into the air. It was all astonishing. I found myself flowing west towards the old Union Pacific train station. There were people standing on the stairs watching the flood flow around the building, trying to help anyone that floated near. I floated toward them and someone pulled me into the stairs, and others helped me stand up. I found that my trousers were ripped completely off of me. I had no shoes. I was standing there in my shirt, ties, socks, and underwear. The train station was flooded by about a foot of water, which went down to a few inches as the hours passed. The survivors with me included women, children, and men. We watched the flooding until the sun began to set. We realized we were going to spend the night in the station, and we tried to prepare a dry place where we could sleep. We tried to sweep the water out of the places we needed to be. And we packed blankets under the doors to try and hold back the water that was still flowing all over the sill. To me, the train station felt like a sinking boat just before it goes under. There were still a few inches of water flowing over the tunnels. We found dry places and sat on the wooden benches to try and get dry. I remember being quite cold and trying to sleep on these benches. In one of the storage areas, we found some small blankets, probably left over from the days of passenger trains. We also found tiny pillows previously used for sleeping on the train. We huddled together and tried to cover ourselves with these. Someone found a storage room filled with workmen's coveralls. They were faded blue like a janitor's uniform. They were clean but not new. I also found a pair of shoes that almost fit. The next morning we found that the flood water was going down. There was a lot of pooling and an amazing variety of debris everywhere, including dead bodies and body parts, which was disturbing. I engaged myself in helping those in the train station, trying to provide for our immediate needs. Someone found a kitchen and some kind of mush, which we mixed with some water and ate cold with our fingers. All telephone and cell phone services were down. There was no electricity or running water, so we were truly in the dark. At about 2 or 3 that afternoon, I decided to make my way back home. It should have taken me half of the day of brisk walking, but my journey took 3 full days. Because of the devastation, the breakup of the roads, and the fallen trees and buildings, I had to keep detouring. Anytime I found someone in need, I joined them in their work. They offered me food and assistance as I made my way home. The devastation was awesome and terrifying, but there was no looting or selfishness. The city had changed. Old landmarks were gone. I found myself disoriented because signs, buildings, and even trees I had used to guide myself home for many years were now gone. I had to keep asking for directions and to find out which roads were open. I traveled south a long distance before I could again turn east for a while, and then north back toward my home. I probably walked 20 miles to cover 5. I looked up and saw that the mountain behind the city had collapsed. The tops of the mountains had fallen upon the upper parts of the city, burying most of the large homes and the benches above the city. When I finally made it to my subdivision, I walked up the street I lived on. I could see no people anywhere. They had all abandoned their homes. The houses were shifted and pushed off of their foundations. My house was so twisted that I could look down into the basement from the outside. I remember that it was no longer habitable and was dangerous to enter. I did not find my wife or any family members. I went back later with help and went down into the basement to recover our food storage and a few personal things, but I never did enter the upper part of my home. I just walked away. The whole quake had lasted only 6 to 8 minutes, but it felt like hours. The flood waters rose for about 8 hours and then began to subside. After that, water remained in the streets and pooled in low places for several weeks. The pools of water quickly became fetid and septic. There was water flooding into Salt Lake City from the Bountiful area. I'm not sure if a reservoir had burst or what might have caused that. There was flooding from the south where the Jordan River was running over its banks. I presume from Utah Lake being inundated by water from the reservoirs from above Provo and other areas. All of this water drained into the Great Lake, Salt Lake, moving the salted water in a tidal wave out into the desert northwest of the lake. Was at least twice the size that it is now and had risen about 12 feet in depth. Low-lying farms and homes were gone. In some places, water was covering I-15. The whole airport was flooded, and in it was months before military planes could land there. I don't believe commercial air services ever were restored. Okay, so we're going to cut this one off there. I'm trying to keep these in like 30 minutes or so, and there's like not another break coming up for a while. So we're going to cut this one off here. Some closing thoughts on this little section of it here was this is, again, all about destruction, all about that, and it just keeps getting worse and worse and worse. I'm very curious to see where this goes. Okay, again, you know, if you're just joining it, whatever, this is about somebody with multiple, you know, I don't even know what you call it. They're dying and getting these visions and whatnot, visions of glory. And I'm clearly, you know, reading it like, what's the deal with people like Chad, Lori, and all that. And that's just what I see. I just see people like Chad and Lori and Jody and them looking at this as filtering it through their narcissism. And again, Chad and Lori sitting here talking about, you know, we're going to lead the 144. And I mean, I guess too, if you're looking at this as like legit, like 100% I believe this, right? I'm not saying I do, but like if this is how a person's reading it, so, you know, Lori, Jody, all these people, then this is like an amazing biblical type tale, right? This is like, it's in this book. The whole world's gonna end. This is what's gonna happen. We're talking second coming. We're talking floods. We're talking Noah's Ark part 4, 5, and 6. Okay, so you get someone like Lori and them who then want to be like, and we're gonna lead that, please. Okay, it's just Yeah, there's been books like this before, not done in like through the eyes of like say religion or whatever you want to call this, but like I had a near-death experience, and this is what I saw, and I cannot think of them right now, but I've read them, and I can remember reading one of them when I was younger and thinking like, wow, you know, like, oh my gosh, is this true or whatever, and then being older and kind of being like, whether it's true or not, like you just have to hold it at arm's length, right? And so I think in this right here, it just depends on what you want to believe and what you believe and whatnot, right? So anyways, that's it. So until next time, we will gather around. Let me know what you think in the comment section. And while you're down there, go on and drop some little sofas off for myself, Rosco and Spirit, Bo and Luke, the rest of the Sofa Squad, because we're going to need a place to rest in between the body reject in this book, right? We're going to try and get through it. We're back on track. Here we go. Boom, boom, boom. So yeah, so do all that down in the comment section. I appreciate it. Until we meander our way down into said comment section, I'll see y'all soon. I just wanted to say thank you again for watching the whole video, and also thank you for being part of the Sofa Squad. Special thanks to all the Patreon members, channel members from both of my channels, everybody who likes, shares, subscribes, comments in the comment sections. It helps the channel out so much. Now don't forget, I do have that other channel, the podcast channel. That's where we go live, we hang out, we talk. We have kind of sort of a schedule, but just be sure and check it out. I'll put it up here on the screen. And then like I said in the beginning of the video, if you want to follow me and Rosco on the Instagram, go on, check it out. It's right here on the screen again. But once again, thank you very much. I really appreciate you being part of the Sofa Squad, and I'll see you in the next video.